Morning, everyone, and good morning to some of you. So, welcome back again after I think 2 weeks of rest. Just for your information, for the last two classes, I was in New York. So now I'm in a completely new time zone. I'm actually now in Japan. Uh, but next week, yeah, I'll still be here in Japan anyway. So anyway, welcome back to our Ancient Path and Modern Mind. Just before we begin, I like to share a little news with you guys. Some of you may have know that actually the reason I came to Japan this time was to sit for my thesis defense, my PhD defense at Kyoto University, and I did it yesterday evening. Yeah, yesterday afternoon actually. And after 2 hours of being really screwed by by my professors, and finally they say, okay, I'll let you pass. So yeah, I'm really thankful to all the people who have given me support, and
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you so much. It was a great relief, and here I am, finishing my study at the Kyoto University. That is something that I think it's a new journey for me again. And well, in the future, I'm going to have more time to prepare for more different materials, for anyone who interested in Buddhism, Yogacara, Chinese Buddhism. And I think I'd love to share with you guys. Okay? Thank you for all your support. Whoever sent me a lot of messages asking how I did. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay. So before we begin, make sure you sit comfortably as usual. Yeah. I always want to start off with just 1 or 2 minutes. Remind ourselves that yes, we have a busy day of work, or we are going to start a busy day of work, but remind ourselves that we always have a choice. There's always an option for us to come back to our breathing, to where we are, to stay focused again, to come back to a rhythm. Let's take a deep breath and slowly breathe out. One more time, take a deep breath. Breathe out. Make sure your feet are touching the floor very comfortably. Your back straight. Your body relaxed. Feel your shoulders. Make sure there's no tension around your shoulders. Just pay attention to our breathing. We don't have to change anything. Just be where we are. And be ready. Okay, when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes. And I invite you to join our palms together, and we'll recite the name of the Buddha 3 times. Homage to the Supreme Teacher, Sakyamuni Buddha. Homage to the Supreme Teacher, Sakyamuni Buddha. Homage to the Supreme Teacher, Sakyamuni Buddha. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, just very quick capture of what we did 2 weeks ago. So we spent a little bit of time talking about what is the I, right? We were still talking about one of the most fundamental teachings in Buddhism, no matter what tradition we are in, Mahayana Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, the very core teaching of Buddha is actually to tell us how we can understand the composition of the meaning of the concept of I. So in brief, the I is nothing but a collection of all the things we are, the things we were, things we believe ourselves to be, and things we aspire to be, things we like or dislike, and so much more. So everything we relate to ourselves actually is part of ourselves. So why is it so? Because the Buddha described that our identity is not really an independent soul, but there are 5 different interacting and changing processes, right? It's a process, 5 different processes that interacting and changing with each other. So recognizing these can really soften our rigid identities and reduce our suffering. Right? Many people, like when they first come to us as monastics, as people who study Buddhism, they always start like, Sifu, so much suffering, so much tension at work. How do I reduce suffering? I'm sure like most of the teachers before, most of the masters before has been asked the same question. So I think this question has not been so important to us like as we are facing now, how to reduce our stress and suffering. And if you go online, they see so many methods: meditation, mindfulness practice, yoga, right? So they're all having the same goal. But it doesn't matter what method you use if we can really understand the core concept of the cause and the reason for our suffering and who we are. So I would say by deconstruct the understanding of I. So that is what the Buddha has been teaching for his whole life, for his 45 years of teaching, is how to actually to reduce our own suffering by looking at what we understand as a self is not like a soul that is there to feel anything, but there are 5 different processes that make us to feel who we are. So, what are the 5? The skandhas, right? We call it in Sanskrit. We have the form, or in short, the body, and we have sensations, and we have perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Okay, form is the most external part of our body. We see that there's a physical body, there are sense organs, the external matter that around us, all things that we can touch, we can see. These are all the things that form the body. And the next thing, sensations, pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, or neutral feeling. So these are about the feelings. When someone tells you that, oh, I don't feel good today, I don't feel right. We say that, oh, this doesn't look right. Right? We always have those feelings. So these are the sensations that, it's either a pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, or neutral feelings. It's very direct. It always comes as an instinct, right? And once you have the feeling, we got to give these feelings a meaning to it. Oh, let's say you see your partner, right? You see the lovely faces, and then you feel like, oh, yeah, I know this is my partner. Yeah, I know. So there's that feeling of connection, that feeling of affectionate immediately arises. So the understanding of this is my friend, this is my partner, this is something else, this is a tree, this is a car. All these are perceptions, right? We understand things, how we understand things. So, and then the next step, we go even a little bit more subtle, is something that related to thoughts, our intentions, and our emotions. Is called the mental formations. So we know something is one thing, but what we make sense of what we know, right, are thoughts. So whenever we see, let's say we see our partner, so the kind of loving kindness will appear, like the affectionate will appear automatically, and then we know that, oh, this is love, right? This is a feeling of love. So all this become a habit. Whenever you see the person's face, you feel love arise in your mind. So this habit or this kind of feelings, emotions, it belongs to mental formations. It forms habit for us. And of course, you also mentioned that consciousness, attention to self, to others, and environment. Consciousness is a very basic, the basis of how we know our environment and ourselves. So the reason do a recapturing is I do receive a couple of questions at the end of our last class, who asking about how do we make sense of exercises. Remember we did this, we asked about this question 2 weeks ago. Which of the 5 aggregates do you tend to identify with the most when you describe yourself? Right? I asked you to write 10 sentences. How you describe yourself? Oh, I'm a smart guy. I'm an easygoing guy. I love hamburger. I'm vegan. So these are the sentences that describe ourselves. I ask you to write 10 sentences, and then which aggregate brings you the most physical or emotional discomfort. I also ask you to write 10 sentences that describe what are the things that make you physically or emotionally discomfort. So why did we do that? Is to understand the 5 aggregates a little bit more. Remember we did a little exercise to try to identify what kind of personality we do have. But let me show you one example. I'm sure this exercise is a little bit of, if different people have different answers, and some may be a little bit ambiguous. So let's look at one of the exercise one of the feedback I received from one of our friends. So, okay, this is what she said, right? You say, 10 sentences about who am I, right? Who we identify with. So the person say, I enjoy hiking with friends, all right? And they say, this is a feeling, a Vedana. It's a feeling. I enjoy hiking with friends. I laugh easily. So love easily, you say, this is also a feeling, right? Love is a joy, a kind of happiness. Taking my child swimming, say, every time when I do that, there's a sense of happiness, and because there's an action, right? So is holding my child's hand and feeling a sense of achievement, whatever it is comfortable. So see, this form plus feeling. So I think I'm a patient, right? It's a perception. I'm smiling at others, right? Say I'm smiling at others. This is a mental formation, right? Because they say that I like is actually a habit. When we're talking about a habit, it's actually a mental formation, and so on and so on. Playing with a singing bowl, I like watching dramas, attending a Buddhist class, feeling uncertain and anxious about the future. I don't dare to tell my family some of my worries. All right, we look at the sentences, we recognize that, okay, when we write that sentence, whether it belongs to one of the 5 categories, right? Form, feeling, perception, mental formation. Usually these are the 4 that we most link with. In the end, I ask you to check, right? How often you see the same category appears again and again. So this is I think this is a fun part, right? For me, when I did this exercise, I was quite I would say it was a bit out of my expectation, because I thought, I was more like a balanced person. I would pay attention to my feelings. I know how I see the world, and I know how my habits are. So in the end, I find that actually it's not, right? I'm like, most of us are not really balanced in all of this when we think of the 10 sentences that start describe yourself. Let's say, for example, this student, if we count how many times, like how frequently the word feelings appear, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, right? And we have many perception, 1, 2, and mental formation, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so the numbers actually not so evenly spread out, right? In 10 sentences, we tend to think of ourselves. So I think this is more like a psychological test. Let's say I ask you to describe yourself, right? Like I'm doing here. Some people will say, oh, when people with more confidence, they'll say, oh, this is who I am. I'm the president. I'm this. I'm that. And some will say that, oh, I love dancing. I love singing. So all these sentences that you use to describe yourself actually reflect what type of personality we have. So in this case, when we use the 5 skandhas to actually link to our way of looking at ourselves, we can see that for this person himself or herself, you can see that the feeling, actually become dominant in all the 5 senses, all the 5, not senses, the 5 aggregates that we have, right? Each of us has different aggregates, 5 of them, all appears, right? So when we think of ourselves, let's say if you have a list that you can see that the feeling appear the most frequent, that shows that the aggregate of feeling actually dominates in our daily experience. Right? Well, some of them, like for myself, when I did that, for me, it's more like a mental formation. Like I feel this, I like to do this and do that, and it's more like the habit and the way that we interact with others. We can see the pattern over there. So these sentences tell us that what type of personality we are, what aggregate that actually dominates our identity. So and then you might ask like, okay, Shifu, well, I'm more like a feeling person, right? Feeling actually plays a very important role in myself. So whenever I make my judgment, feeling is always the first thing I pay attention to. For example, like you want to, whether you want to go out to eat or not, go out for dinner tonight, or you want to cook at home. Some may say, oh yeah, I don't feel like going out. I feel like sitting home. So some people will answer like that, I don't feel like. So that's the kind of feeling that actually kind of like have influence on the decision. But some people will say, you will have a different way of analyzing the question. You say, oh, dining out, it means spend more money. It means stuck in a traffic jam. It means, it also on the other way, it means that no effort. I mean, washing and preparing the dishes and enjoy a new environment, So some people will tend to use analyzing. So analyzing this might be perception, right, and mental formation. So we can see that whichever way we think, when we want to make a decision, the aggregates that dominates us most of the time will form a pattern of how we think. So the conclusion is, if we find ourselves are mostly controlled or influenced by feeling, then how to be more balanced? Pay more attention, right, to logical reasoning. Let's say mental formation. Pay attention to, for some people who use logical thinking a lot, pay more attention to your feelings before you make decision. You can have 10,000 reasons to do one decision, but at the end, ask yourself, right, I should do that, but is that really what I enjoy? Is that really what really rings with my the idea of who I am? Whether I'm okay with it, whether I'm happy with it. So this is why this exercise helps us to understand what aggregates that dominates our daily activities, right? Become who we are. And the same thing for aggregates of discomfort. Dental cleaning. Oh, there's a feeling, right? So every time she goes to a dentist, she feels discomfort, and there's a feeling. So like occasional bleeding, gum, there's a feeling. Teacher complain about child's play, whatever, it's mental formation, feeling, and then feeling. Cough attack. Okay, this is a form because the body is actually going through the suffering. Watching drama and a missing evening chanting. So it's a feeling and mental formation. So feeling, form, mental formation. Here again, you can see that this person's feeling is the dominant way that shape her personality. So she's more like a feeling type. You can say that, oh, she's more like a feeling type of person. Okay, well, is it right or wrong? I mean, don't misunderstand, right? It doesn't matter you have to be whoever you are not, there's no best answer of that. It just shows us that our tendency to use one of the aggregates to show who we are, to make decision, and to interact with other people. If we are a person who are more feeling type, so next time before we make decision or we do any action, pay attention to other parts like mental formation, like perception. Right? Oh, what is that? What is going through in my mind? Is the feeling of happiness or comfortable? Is it reliable? Or is it just a flux of all kind of hormones that going through in your mind that makes you feel, you have the urge to do something? Sometimes they are not. And sometimes they are not, especially when they are under stress. I'm sure you have gone through the same situation like this. Like just 2 days ago, before I went for my thesis defense, and then I remember in the early morning, I sent a message to my to Youzhe Fashi, who is my brother monk, and then I said, "Oh no, I'm so stressed. I didn't know what to expect in my defense. I'm not prepared." And the next thing he told me that, "Oh, don't worry, just go and take an ice cream." I was like, what? What does that have to do with it? So he was giving me a solution to deal with my anxiety is taking taking some ice cream to comfort your body, right? So this is about the what? Well, to help my feeling of uncomfortable feeling, like the discomfort feeling, I take some ice cream, that is the form, like the body, like the sensation, feels good, then we can reduce it. So it's interesting if we think about how we decide on doing something to make ourselves feel comfortable. Some people will use external things like an ice cream, right, to comfort the mind. So that means that for this kind of people like me, maybe the body form or the feeling part actually plays an important role of how we think. But for some other people, they need to give them reason. Oh, don't worry about your test, don't worry about your defense, you're well prepared. Look, in the past for like 5 years that you did your essay so well that like you even published how many papers. So give all the reasons that give me confidence. Well, they might work, right? So this is mental formation. So playing with the understanding of the 5 aggregates, I think is very interesting. It helps us to see what type of people we are, how we deal with other people, and how we think for ourselves, right? By being more balanced in the 5 different aggregates, help us to do so. All right, so I love this phrase given by Shunryo Suzuki, who was the first Japanese Zen monk who spread Zen Buddhism in America. He said that many sensations come, many thoughts or images arise, but they are just waves of your own mind. But I think this beautifully captured the summary of the 5 aggregates. We have sensation all the time. You feel good when you're eating a good piece of vegan food. Many thoughts or images arise, right? But they are just wave. It comes and it goes, right? Like 24 hours ago, I was so anxious about my defense. So my sensation was about just how to answer questions, how to stay calm, right? All my anxiety was already there. And after I finished, boom, all of a sudden, all the stress are gone. and then I went to a dinner with my professor. And what I found that, at that moment, I really enjoyed the meal so much. And all the sensations of anxiety and stress are just gone. I completely enjoy myself. Well, I was like really having a good meal in a fine restaurant, like it's more like a fine dining. But imagine if I just go to a Tai Pai Dong, I mean, like, those are the hawker store, even drinking some water, I would really just feel, the sense of freedom and sense of um, a worried free sensation. They just fill my whole mind. So what happened there was we have sensations appear and disappear. We have thoughts that comes and goes. In the end, they're just wave that pass through at a certain time and a point. So no matter what sensations or thought we are feeling at now, just remember that, it's impermanent, it comes and goes. And if you don't like whatever it is now, do something with it or just wait for it. The passive way is you wait for it, it will come out, pass through you as well. So this is from the Zen point of view, right? How to deal with the five aggregates, the sense of I, or who we are. All right. So any questions so far about this? So this is a very brief introduction of how to utilize the understanding of aggregates and how we can make use of it in our daily experience. Anything, any comment that you want to add? Okay, if not, we should move on, right? Which I will leave some time in the end for the questioning part. Oh, I have a hand raised. Call, yeah. Can you just unmute yourself?
Hello, Venerable.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I just have a question because you are sharing with us the five aggregates.
Yeah.
So usually there's no sentences coming from the consciousness. So I'm just wondering what kind of sentence would you describe yourself? If you're coming from consciousness, is it that I'm contented with whatever that's happening now? I'm happy with whatever that is at the present, or do you have anything to share regarding this aggregate?
Okay, so what is consciousness actually? Yeah, attention. Consciousness is the way we understand that we see the world, right? Attention to self, to others, and environment. So, but thank you for raising this. This is something that I didn't explain very detailed. It's because consciousness is something that happens all the time. Imagine we have five different senses, and then if you want to add in the mind, there will be six consciousness, right? Six type of consciousness: the eye, the nose, the ear, the mouth, the body, or we call the skin, and the mind itself, right? So there's six consciousness in general. So anytime we have contact with the outside world, anytime we have a thought in our mind, one of the consciousness, at least one of the consciousness is active. So imagine you close your eyes and you say, oh, I see nothing. Of course, when you close your eyes, there's no light like going through the sense organ of the eye. So that means that your consciousness doesn't get, to your eye won't get the signal that it needs to bring the consciousness of seeing things. So that means that consciousness actually happens all the time, no matter what we do. Have a feeling. What is a feeling? A feeling is something that happens in the mind, right? The feeling is not on your skin, the feeling is not on your eye, but the feeling happens in the mind. So that is a sixth consciousness, the consciousness number 6 of the mind that is working here. Anytime we have a feeling, anytime we have a thought, the sixth consciousness is working there. So that means that, of course, you say that you write 10 sentences, none of them show consciousness. But now, if we understand the very detailed meaning of consciousness, all 10 sentences involve at least one consciousness.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So because I didn't mention it in details, because the consciousness is something that usually we don't have control about. Yeah, you cannot say that, I want to have what? I want to have more consciousness on, let's say, the eye. Yeah, maybe you can do so. You kind of close you kind of like stuff your nose with something else and close your mouth and and also blow your ears and just use your eyes, right? Well, I don't think it's feasible. So that means that we don't actually really pay attention to how the consciousness works. It works automatically. But one thing we have to pay attention is once we get addicted to using social media, for example, Instagram, TikTok. So whenever we have our phone, let's say we are not having our phone in our hand, and you start looking for it after 5 seconds, right? That time, what happening is your consciousness for looking for the phone is so strong that it become like an addiction. So the attention itself actually is related to consciousness. What we pay attention to. You heard a noise, you say, oh, and you listen carefully. Oh yeah, that is the noise of the little mice that running in my house. And then you hear another people talking. Oh, that's the voice of my mother who is so dearly to me. So consciousness means that whatever that caught your attention, and you pay more attention to it to understand what's going on. So it is very important to pay attention to how we use consciousness. It's because it affects our attention, right? And then you ask, oh, so what comes first, consciousness or attention? Well, it's both way, right? If, for the example of of the social media, we look at the screen all the time, right? Because our eye keep getting all the information there, and your brain and your mind consciousness started to have fun, enjoy watching at all this. At that time, your attention will be locked by the eye consciousness. The eyes are locked on the cell phone screen, and your attention is all there. So that means you have no control over your attention at all, because you let yourself to be glued to the screen of the phone. So if you realize that, oh, now what I'm using now is my attention is all on the videos on social media, but I'm not using other parts of my aggregates. So at that time, we put our attention back, put the cell phone away, try to see our environment using different aggregates like the form of the body, pay attention to a sensation, to the perception, and not just looking at one thing, that is a cell phone. So one way of looking at consciousness is always talking about where our attention is, where we put our attention, and that's also the main goal of meditation. All right, I hope that answers your question, why consciousness doesn't appear, because this is always there. And we don't actually talk about, oh, I have consciousness. Of course, when we're conscious, we have consciousness. Even when we're unconscious, you still have dreams, right? So it's always there.
Thank
Is that
you.
okay?
Thank you, Venerable. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Anything else? I think there's one question here. Okay, can you share with us an example of how will we describe ourselves when we are coming from the consciousness aggregate as it is? I am contented with what I have at the present moment. And example, how will we describe?
You can ignore that. That was my question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
the same thing you asked, yeah, okay. I find it hard to differentiate the sensation, perception, and mental formation. Okay. Because they happen so fast together, they seem related to each other closely and one affecting another. Yes, you're absolutely right. They happen just so quickly in a snap of a finger. And if we don't train ourselves to differentiate them, we cannot, right? But it can be done. We need like a little bit of mindfulness training to actually be more tuned to finding out, to be more aware of which part of our mind is actually being dominant senses at a time. It is good to know that our overall experience can be broken down to 5 parts, okay? And we have a choice of not to be attached and suffered at each point. Yes, exactly right. But you're right, find hard to differentiate the sensation, perception, and mental formation. Okay, my advice is look at the definition, the very brief definition I gave in the previous slide about the 5 gigahertz. Like try to look at a description and study a little bit on understanding of what each represent. I'm sure you have a better understanding, right? Sensation. After sensation, we have perception. After perception, we have a mental formation. So it goes in sequence like this. One is subtle than the other. Sensation, right, always come first, whether a feeling is comfortable or not comfortable. Perception is, oh, once the feeling is there, then we start to know what it is. Right? The feeling always comes before knowing. It is interesting. Right? The feeling of comfortable and non-comfortable always appears so fast that we don't even have time to think. But then the next thing we know is, oh, they smell something, and then before you knew it, you know it's uncomfortable. But after you knew it's uncomfortable, then only you knew, oh, this is the smell of durian. Oh, I'm sorry, durian smell good, right? Doesn't smell bad. But anyway, feeling comes first. Knowing what it is second. And after knowing what it is, it comes to our action, which is mental formation. You reach for the durian, you decide to eat it, or you decide to stay away from it, to run away from it. So by using the durian as an example, you can give a very clear distinction about what is sensation, what is perception, and what is mental formation. So it happens so fast. But if you don't break it down like this, if you don't see it in different parts, but we thought is it just an action that like some people like to say, even I myself, I cannot resist durian, right? I have no power over durian. I'm overpowered by durian. So that's what it means. So that way of giving up just show that we don't understand how the 5 aggregates work. Right? If you look at it, different parts, we feel that we are more in power and more in control. I think the beauty of it is it gives us back the control. Okay. So what makes us experience the 5 aggregates working as a whole, as a person? What binds them all together? Well, what makes them work as a whole is a misconception. Because as I said, it happens so quickly. We thought that it is a whole, but actually it is like step-by-step part, right? It has a time lapse in between, but it was so quick, we didn't realize it. So what binds them all together? What binds them all together? Interesting. Anything binds them all together? I don't think I understand the question very clearly. I think if I'm guessing the reason what binds them all together is because all of us had a 5 aggregates, right? So what bind them all together? I think it's a life force. As long as we have the body and we have the mind in this life, definitely got a 5 aggregate. So we'll call it the life force of the mind and the body that keeps all this work together. The time that we pass away, the time that we die, the 5 aggregates will also dissolve and disappear. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, right? The life force of the body and mind that bind all this together. Okay? All right, let's move on. Anything else before we move on? All right, let's do a little bit of we should start talking about Mahayana, right? Finally. I know like this course, why we had to do the beginning part of introduction to Buddhism is I have to. I think it feels more complete to talk about the Buddha's teaching that applies to all traditions. Then only we move on to Mahayana, right? So what is Mahayana in a nutshell, especially after the time? So we start by talking about what happened, after the Buddha achieved Nirvana, after Buddha went to Nirvana. What happened then? It is a time in, let's say, okay, until like 2nd century BCE. That is 200 years before Common Era. All the teachings that were given by the Buddha was actually oral transmission, right? And oral transmissions mean that I'm a teacher, right? I remember I learned many of the Buddha's texts from my teacher, and then I memorize it and I pass on to my students. So what the student do is you have to memorize every word I tell you. I'm sure some of you, I mean, many of us have gone to the traditional Theravada temple. I remember one time I went to visit a temple in Bangkok, and when I went in, there were many young, like I think they are young boys who went there to have 1 or 2 years of experience to become the novice monks. So I think there was during lunchtime, and before they had lunch, like hundreds of them sit together in a big hall, and they all chanting the Pali Sutra, very very unified, very beautiful. I think the rhythm of they like chanting the text is so beautiful that you feel like you're actually in a trance. Like it's just nice and very calming. So what it is, chanting itself actually is the way how the teaching of the Buddha being transmitted actually for a few hundred years before it was written down, especially in the Pali text after the Buddha had passed away, right? Buddha had achieved nirvana. So the first transmission of the Buddha's teaching is all orally, right? It's the first thing I want to talk about. Because the Buddha did not leave behind any written teaching. Yeah. Why so? Because during the Buddha's time, even though we already had some writings, especially on Sanskrit, we have records that the teaching on the Vedics, which belongs to the Brahmanism, they have already some of the record that were kind of like crafted on a palm leaf, right? They pass on to read, but they are for very important, especially Brahmanism, sacred texts. But for Buddha's teaching at that time, it wasn't used at all, right? So whatever the Buddha said, the disciples, his disciples, they will memorize and learn it and pass on. So this happened for 400 years. Okay. Now, if you remember this sentence, you know what kind of problem may cause, right? If everything was transmitted only by mouth. So actually what happened is, okay, now you might ask a question like, how do we know what was being taught by the Buddha? So immediately after the Buddha's achieved nirvana, and we had something what we call the first council at Rajagraha, right? This is a place where the Buddha used to teach, where most of his students were staying. So they have a first council. So what did they do? The Buddha's eldest disciple, Mahakashyapa, he kind of organized a meeting. So what they did in the meeting was they asked Ananda, right, one of the disciples who has the best memory, to recite all the discourse, all the suttas that have been told by the Buddha before, right? Ananda. And then Upali, who is very good at following the Mahabharata monastic code. So he was the one who recite all the Vinaya, all the rules that has been laid down by the Buddha's time. So of course you might have heard about the story of how did that happen, because Ananda, because all the 500 disciples of the Buddha who was invited by Mahakashyapa, right, the eldest student, the elder disciple, to actually come to the council to collect all the Buddha's teaching. They have to be an arhat, right? Arhat means the kind of the highest achieved level in Theravada and in early Buddhism. So, but at that time, Ananda, right, one of the disciple that has followed Buddha for a long time, the longest time maybe, and then he seemed to be not an arhat yet. What happened was he couldn't enter. Right? You imagine that he was blocked out from the first council. What happened was right before it started, so Ananda was really nervous. Oh, I should really train hard to achieve arhat, and then I should enter the first council to help to recite all the discourses. And then he worked so hard until he finally found that, my body cannot take anymore. Even though I'm so really stressed, I'm so run out of time, but too bad, I need to rest. My body is all, my body cannot take anymore. And he relaxed, he rested for a while, and boom, at that time, and then he just realized that he understands the very root cause of his suffering. And good news to all of us was that he achieved the state of an arhat, and then he went in to the first council. He was allowed to get in, and then voila, today we got all the suttas that we can hear. Sorry? Anyone say something? Okay, we're good. All right. So this is the story about that, right? Whether it's true or not, check for the sutras, and you will find more details about it. So we had the first council. Then you kind of have a collection of all the teachings from the Buddha, and people start to recite them, memorize them, recite them line by line. Imagine how tough it is, right? But the way to recite them is to make him to a chant-like form for accuracy. So what does that mean? By make the suttas to be more chant-like form. I'll show you afterwards, right? So this is the painting of how the first, we call that the first council was like at Rajagraha, right? We have Maha Kashyapa sitting in the middle, and then all the other 500 arhats gathered around. Everyone, so it was led by Ananda. He will kind of he will read out whatever he remembered the Buddha has said, right? And then it has to be approved by each and every of all the arhats they gathering around there. There were together 500 of them. So this was what described in the sutra regarding how the first council was being conducted. Okay, it's a picture. All right. Why oral transmission, right? Why they didn't write down the Buddha's teaching in the very beginning? Well, this must be the next question, right? The reason was, writing at that time was rare, and it was reserved for royal records only, right? It was rare occasion that not everything could be used written, but royal records. And memory-based cultures, right, use poetic patterns and repetition for preservation. Oral transmission is not like some random words or sentence you hear and then you memorize and repeat. No, they make them into a poetic form. They have certain ways of, because in Pali language, they have the long vowel and a short vowel, and you have to, and when you alternate between the long vowel and short vowel, and in a certain type of pattern, it will become like a very poetic, beautiful lyrics that you can sing along. I mean, is very beautiful. So this way, it helps us to remember and memorize them much better. So it was said that the Pali Canon, right, was written down in Sri Lanka around the 1st century BCE. So 1st century BCE is about 300 years or 400 years after the Buddha passed away, right? The first record that we have on the canon that we see today is about the 1st century before Common Era, about 400 years after the Buddha passed away. This is one of the things that we should know of. And this is the first complete Buddhist canon been written down. And there are 3 types we call Tripitaka, right? Tripitaka is Pitaka. Pitaka is basket. What kind of basket? I don't know, any kind, and the basket can hold a ping pong ball, eggs, right? 3 basket. So one basket has one certain stuff. One is a sutta. Sutta are the words or the story of the Buddha, the sutta. Vinaya are the code of ethics, what you should do, how to behave, what to wear, when to sit, when to sleep, or everything about living in a sangha, in a community, is called a Vinaya. And then we have Abhidharma. Abhidharma is the explanation on the sutta, right, given by the disciples of the Buddha. So all these 3 different parts of what we call the collection of the Buddha's teachings become 3 main categories, and they call Tripitaka. Right? And three, when they put together, they call it a canon. A canon is a collection of all the teachings. Okay, so we believe that the first complete Buddhist canon, which is written on paper, right, written on the palm leaf, not paper, is 1st century before Common Era in Sri Lanka. Okay, this is one of the point that we have. Okay, we say that, let's say the Pali, right, the Pali was something they use how to remember. Actually, it's written in a beautiful, very poetic way of chanting. I'm sure everyone have heard of this, right? Buddhang saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami. They go for refuge, right? So if I just ask you to read this and memorize it, actually it's quite difficult. So when you hear any Theravada monk chant this, even I do chant this sometimes, right? Depending on the occasion, we will have a very kind of beautiful rhythm to sing along. We will sing like Bodhang Saranam Gacchami. You see, when an A with a long while, with a long bow on top is a long while, so it becomes Gacchami. So that way, you remember it easily, and it go like a rhythm like this. And the second one, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, Sangham Saranam Gacchami, right? Once you hear it, kind of the lyrics that keep playing in your mind, right? So this is how the canon was being remembered and memorized by the teacher to the student, and then the student to their student as well. They passed on for 400 years. Just imagine all these texts were being memorized by people. And then the second refuge, like Dutiyampi Bodhang Saranam Gacchami, right? Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranam Gacchami, right? You see that the words repeat themselves very often. So, and then the rhythmic kind of singing help you to memorize. So this is how it was done. And the third time, Tatiyampi Bodhang Saranam Gacchami. Right, so this is how it was being memorized. Okay. So before, after Buddha passed away in about 400 years or within that time, actually we know that there were 18 different schools they were divided into 18 different schools, right? Only now today we see that the Theravada school, which is, Theravada means the teaching of the elders, has survived, right? It happens around 100 BCE, right? That is about around the time the first Tripitaka was being recorded, right? Around that time, there were already 18 different schools. Why there are so many schools? This is an interesting question, right? It's because of course, Buddha has had many students, and some students after Buddha is passed, and then they have different opinions about certain things. It might be the Vinaya, it might be the rule of conduct, it might be some understanding of some very of principles of what the Buddha taught. So these are common, right? So they break into different parts, and they live in different sections of the country in India. So, example, we have Savathisvada, Mahasamgika, Dhammaguptaka, Stavira Vada, whatever it is, right? There are 18 names of this. So these are the name of the school. If you're interested, you can you can go to Google and search for them. It will tell you what is the difference between, let's say, Sawatiswada and Mahasangika. Sawatiswada in Chinese is 说一切有部, right? And Mahasangika is a 大众部. Okay, if you are familiar with the Chinese term, these names may be very familiar to you. But anyway, so these are the earliest 18 schools that belong to the early Buddhism that after the Buddha, right? And then only Theravada, meaning teaching of the elders, survive today. Today, you go to Thailand, you go to Sri Lanka, you only see one of the 18 schools that is being maintained until now, that is being transmitted until now. It's called the teaching of the elders, Theravada. That's why I'm mentioning the term Theravada many times, right? This is what it means. Okay, it flourished in Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos. All right, this is just for information. And what is Theravada school? What is the characteristic is it preserves the Pali canon, right? And also a conservative monastic lineage, right? They believe that they have kept the most I would say authentic or the same more almost same, I would say, the same monastic life that Buddha was using during his time. So they use a Pali canon, and this is different from what we call now the Mahayana Buddhism. Okay, so this is a little I think this is a beautiful drawing. Well, I didn't do it. I get it online. It shows us that how the different lineage, we call it, you have the Theravada, Vajrayana, and Mahayana, how they spread into Asia, like the Great Asia part. You can see that from the yellow line, we have the earliest Buddhists spread out from an area near Nepal, right? North India, Nepal is spread out, and then to different parts, to the west, to the south, and we have the Mahayana that goes different way to Central Asia, all the way to Mongolia, to China, and then to Korea, to Japan. And then from China also, it went to Vietnam, yeah, and then Southeast Asia. So actually, it's pretty consistent with what we see the world map now of how the different school of Buddhism, like how the population spread out. So I think this pretty much say that I explain it. And Vajrayana, usually we call it Tibetan Buddhism, is actually started from Nepal as well, from the birthplace of the Buddha, and then it went to Tibet, from Tibet to Mongolia, and then from Tibet also went to China. So this is a Vajrayana tradition. Of course, Theravada tradition is started from the same place, on the middle, like on north of India, and then it went to Sri Lanka, right? And Sri Lanka also, from Sri Lanka, also it came to Southeast Asia, to Thailand, to Cambodia. So this is the road of how the different school of the Buddhism that we see today, the three main groups being spread out and forming what we see today on the map. Okay, let's continue. So, Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism, what are the differences? What are they? Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism. Right now we have talk about the 18th school of Theravada Buddhism, right? Before Theravada is only one of them, and then we have like different school of Mahayana Buddhism. So what are the differences between Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism? So I'd like you to do already like maybe 2 minutes, okay? Use a pen and a pencil. Whatever that comes to your mind, when you think about Theravada Buddhism, what is it? What are the characteristics? How is it different from Mahayana Buddhism? Okay? One example is, think about, Theravada Buddhism, they wear orange robe. And Mahayana Buddhism, whatever color, gray, brown. Okay? So name the differences. You can tell if you see one of the monks from Theravada, one of the monks from Mahayana. Why are they different? Okay. Just 1 minute, let you write it down. Okay. All right. Have you written down some parts that you think what they are? Okay. May I have someone? Let's say you want to share the differences. Oh, I already have two of them. Theo has written. Okay, small versus big vehicle. Oh, who is small, who is big? Aim to attain Arhat versus Bodhisattva. Okay, so the small means to attain Arhat, and the big one is Bodhisattva. Okay, in different dress code, of course. Diet, eat anything, given versus vegetarian. Okay. Well, that's a little bit more than that. Okay, let's see. And by you say what? Theravada, no meal afternoon. Okay, versus Maya takes 3 meals. Wow, some people don't take 3 meals. Okay, I don't take 3 meals sometimes. Okay, Theravada, not necessarily vegetarian. Okay, versus Mahayana, pure vegetarians. Okay, food wise, right? They're different. Robes are different. Okay, of course, robes are different style, different color. Buddha lived and died versus we can all be Buddha. Buddha lived and died. Oh, I think I guess what you mean, right? Buddha is so in maybe in Theravada Buddhism, we achieve arhatship, but not becoming the Buddha. Maybe in Mahayana Buddhism, everyone should and can become the Buddha. Okay, I think this is what you're saying. So, and Cole say that Vinaya rules are different. Yeah, the number of the rules are a little bit different. Okay, Wasili, you say the individual liberation and Arhat path versus communal liberation, a bodhisattva path. Okay, and the concept of shunyata brought about by Mahayana and its teaching of equality of samsara and nirvana. This is quite interesting. Yeah. Individual liberation, of course, arhatship talking about self-liberation, and communal liberation, which is true bodhisattva path. Yes, this is true. The concept of sunyata, yeah, from Mahayana, in equality of samsara and nirvana. This is really deep, yeah. 什么 In Chinese we say that 烦恼即菩提, right? 菩提即烦恼. So if you have a problem, the problem can be something that leads you to bodhicitta. And so now I said equality between samsara and nirvana. So this is a very interesting teaching in Mahayana as well. Theravada, okay, by Sharon. Theravada is self-liberation. Mahayana, it receive help from bodhisattvas for liberation. Receive help. If I cite the name of Kuan Yin Bodhisattva, will she help me to get liberation? I hope. Yeah, I'm not sure. This is a good thought. Actually, we have Mahayana schools that teach us that, right? You chant the name, the Buddha will somehow help you in a way. Well, we will discuss the logic about that, right? It's not as simple as that. It's not by just typing the name and then you'll get all the help. It's not so simple, right? We will take some time to discuss about what does that mean. Okay, by it's Theravada to liberate oneself, Mahayana to liberate all the sentient beings. Okay, Mahayana more present Buddhas. Present Buddhas? Oh, you mean the Buddhas that in different worlds? Yes. I think there are billions of them in all different worlds. It's true, yeah. In Theravada, we only mention Buddha Shakyamuni. That's true. And Core say that Theravada goes for arms round. Yeah, that's a good one. Link, the map shows Theravada spread to a section of India, if I'm not mistaken. Theravada spread to a section, yeah, of course, it started from India. It also spread to the west of India. That's true. And Mahayana Sutra seem to have been brought to China and translated. The sutra are not in Theravada. Sutra seem to have brought to China and translated. These sutra are not in Theravada. Okay, this is a good question. Of course, almost all of the texts that appear in China, they were, well, originally they were all translated. So where did they get it from? Like Xuanzang, right? Xuanzang in the Tang Dynasty, he went to India, he went to Nalanda, he went to like the most famous university in India at that time. He went there to get what? He went there to get all the Sanskrit texts. Or all the local languages and brought back to China to translate them. So, are these sutras not in Theravada? Yeah, it's a good question. Not some of them they share, especially we call it Nikaya. Nikaya, it belongs to the sutta. Many of the sutta actually they share among the Chinese translation and the Pali text. They can find a lot of matching texts, for these two, especially for the sutta, for the Nikaya. So it doesn't mean that China has its own set, and let's say the Theravada Buddhism has its own set. Many of them actually are matching. But when we talk about Mahayana, right? Mahayana is not being we don't see Mahayana text in Theravada. That is true. But China also has a lot of Theravada texts. We call it the early Buddhist texts because when they first went to China, they don't really separate them. Oh, this is they don't really care so much about, as long as it's a Sanskrit text, they will all accept it. It doesn't mean that, this is from the Hinayana, this is from Mahayana, and then they will choose. Well, they don't concern too much about it. So there's a mix of it. And core, next they say the canon is different, Nikaya versus Agama. Yes, the name is different, but I have to say, as I just said, many of the contents are actually the same. Right? It's very interesting, especially if you look at the Majjhima Nikaya, Bhikkhu Bodhi in America. He's already made some comparison. You find that many of the texts can match, right? It seems that they came from the same original. Okay, some versus no relaxation in Vinaya. Okay, Vasa period different for Theravada and Mahayana. Yes. Okay, there's still a lot more. Okay, thank you for sharing. The last one is sorry, I skip a little bit here. Valeria, you say that in Mahayana it seems we use our imagination and intuition. Interesting. So the Theravada doesn't use imagination? Well, yeah, okay. So I think I get what you mean, yeah. In some of the texts, there were a lot of, something that we don't really see in a common world. Like when in some Mahayana texts, we have mentioning about when the Buddha started to preach, there there are many lights coming out from around the Buddha's body, right? And the sound was like so many different beautiful, beautiful, like I would say, sound and kind of tone that goes around. So these are quite imaginative, right? Something that is hard for us to see these days. Okay, Theravada meditation, monastic focus, Jataka, tales, focus on anatta, Mahayana, Bodhisattva path, devotional practices. All right, there's so many ways of how to differentiate Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana. Of course, some of them are our understanding. Some of them may be true. Some of them may be, debatable. So thanks for sharing. Thanks. Go a little bit about what it is now. Okay, first of all, what is Mahayana and what is Hinayana? So Hinayana is a term coined by, of course, who? Mahayana writers, who has pejorative, connotations. Okay, so actually, the term Mahayana means great vehicle. Hinayana means small vehicle. Just use common sense. Who would call themselves, I am a small vehicle, right? You are a big vehicle. Of course, this is a small vehicle is used, but a big one, ourselves, Mahayana, right? We call them small vehicle. So, and we understand that Hinayana is actually not being used anymore in today's, especially in academic. I think it has been like decades. We dropped the term because it brings some negative connotation. So now we call them either Theravada Buddhism or early Buddhism, right? So don't use Hinayana, right? The reason I'm showing here is to show that not to use it. So what does a division signify? Mahayana, Hinayana, right? Exactly as somebody have mentioned, some of the basic differentiation is Hinayana, Theravada Buddhism focus more on personal liberation, right? And then strict monastic discipline and a historical Buddha. Shakyamuni Buddha is the one that we focus on, but not others, thousands of Buddhas. And Mahayana emphasize the Bodhisattva path, universal liberation, and devotion to transcendent Buddhas and Bodhisattva like Avalokiteshvara and Manjushri. So the world of Bodhisattvas in Mahayana is richer. You can find almost all Bodhisattvas that suit your need. If you're sick, go to the medicine Buddha. If you need more money, maybe you go to what's the name again? We call it in Chinese. We have like a big belly Buddha, right? So it is another statue of Maitreya, right? Of Maitreya Bodhisattva. So Mahayana is quite rich in terms of the kinds or the numbers of Bodhisattva. So, minor scriptures introduce celestial Buddhas like Amitabha and realms like Sukhavati, Pure Land. We chant the name of Amitabha, and if you are sincere enough, you are devoted enough, then you might be reborn in the Sukhavati, the Pure Land of Amitabha, in the future life. So, these are some of the division, right, when we think about early Buddhism or Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism. As simple as that. Right? I've shown this graph before, but let's need to look at it. So how does the Mahayana begin? Okay, give me just a few more minutes. I won't talk so long about it. So it's about 150 to 100. That is about before like the first century, like second century before Common Era to the first century after Common Era. So we can see from a history that there's a new movement identified as Mahayana. It happens it's quite long ago, right? It happened like immediately like after probably 300 years after the Buddha. And then we can see that there's some record about activity by the Mahayana Buddhism. So exactly when and where it began is still an unsolved mystery. Right? Just bear in mind. So the earliest Mahayana text, which is example, the Prajna Paramita Sutra, appeared around 50 BC, before century era, before the Common Era. So this is one of the most direct proof of the Mahayana Buddhism of this text. Prajna Paramita Sutra is about wisdom. It's talk about professional wisdom, prajna, and the ideas of emptiness like sunyata. Like someone mentioned sunyata just now, is one of the key idea in Mahayana Buddhism. So initially, Mahayana was a movement within early Buddhist schools. Right? We have remember we talked about 18 Buddhist schools, and Mahayana, they say that, well, it is among them. It came from the 18 Buddhist school. But whether it's true or not, in academic, we still don't have a very definitive answer for that. So, but we should read more about it and understand how it actually worked. But now we don't have enough evidence to show where the Mahayana started. Right? So many early Mahayana followers belong to the school like the Sawadhisvada and the Dhammaguptaka. So it shows that many of the early Mahayana, we call it Mahayana Buddhists, actually came from the Theravada school or Sawadhisvada or different school, Dhammaguptaka. So this is the best guess of how it began. Right? This is this Heart Sutra in Sanskrit. Sanskrit Siddham script, right? Sanskrit is a spoken language at that time and to record, but the script itself, the writing itself, is a Siddham. So this is how it was transmitted when we have a written record. So now, but some people say that, oh no, the beginning of Mahayana, it has different reason of how the Mahayana began. So the first of the assumption is no, right? Mahayana is what? It's around the 1st century, right? And it's a northwest of South India. So it focused on lay people, One group of academic people say that actually Mahayana Buddhism was started by lay people. Not by monastic. Why? Because they pay attention on generosity by giving donation, right? They pay attention on devotional practices. They pay attention they don't really emphasize so much on renunciation, right? As one of the characteristics that someone mentioned in the difference between Mahayana and Theravada. So now people can get, these characteristics really match the idea that they might be started by lay people, especially by a scholar like Gregory Chopin. And then he argued that Mahayana began outside the monastic elite. Elite means the early Buddhist, monastic group. And it is among the lay people who are drawn to rituals and merit making. Right? Making merits, to give donation to the temple. So making merits sometimes means they're giving donation of money. So who have the money? Of course, these are the lay people who support Buddhism. So he argued that Mahayana actually began by lay people. Continue. So there are two kinds of lay people, right? One is they have faith of the stupa. That means that like stupas is where they put the lyrics of the Buddha, right? And then they build a tower around it. People come and they pray, and then they give offering, and then they remember the Buddha. So this is a stupa. So he argues that there are a group of lay people who really pay attention to the stupas, and they're devotional, and they go there to take pilgrimage. They offer flowers, incense. So, and then there are also inscription and archaeological findings at sites like Sanchi and Amaravati. That there are inscription that shows that these are the people who come to make donation, who who built the stupas, So these are the people who started Mahayana. So this is argued by the scholar, right? It's interesting. Another group, right, this of lay people who started Mahayana is they have faith in the Dharma. So now they venerated the scripture. They say, they actually pay attention, make the scripture more important, and Saddhamma Pundarika Sutra, like some of Lotus Sutra, they copy, they preserve it, and they read the sutra equally to practicing the sutra. So this seems like a practice done by Mahayana Buddhism, chanting the content of the sutra is equal to practicing the Dharma. So this idea is actually quite Mahayana, quite Mahayanist Buddhism. And so the reason given is that these are the two groups who started Mahayana. But is it really that? Is it really so simple? It's still debatable, right? It's not sure. So books become objects of merit, just like what we have now, and almost like relics. Okay. I think, but another theory that says that actually Mahayana was begun not by lay people, by monastics, right? And it was like the monks who live in a monastery and they live together, they observe the same Vinaya, the same rules and monastic rules, and especially this has a record by one of the important monk who went to India. His name is Fa Xian. He is from China. He went to India for pilgrimage and he visited India from 399 to 412. So in his record, he mentioned about in a traditional monastery in India at that time, he could see Mahayana Buddhists, Mahayana monks, and the early Buddhists, like the different school of monks, they live together harmoniously in the same temple. It's quite amazing because nowadays we don't see that, right? It's not easy to have different lineage of monastic to live in the same temple nowadays because we tend to have different culture, different way of life. So we kind of separate. But according to the record by Fa Xian, no, at that time, like the 4th to 5th century, different they live harmoniously, even though they call themselves Mahayana, some don't call themselves Mahayana, but they observe the same code of conduct. So this theory shows that no, Mahayana was started by monks in a monastery, but not by lay people. Okay, so this is one of the cave in Ellora in India that shows the monastery that were carved under the stone, right? Or when they look before, so these are actually the rooms that was lived by the monks who do practice of meditation there. They live there, and these are the places that we see the monastics from Mahayana and also other different schools, they live together. So these are a really good example of Mahayana maybe was not started by lay people, but by monastic themselves. But whatever it is, we don't have, it's still being debated among scholars until we have more, what do you call it, until we have more evidence to show how it actually started. So right now we just have to know that these theories exist and how to make good use of it, how to understand it. We see, what other new evidence they come out. All right. So I think I can stop sharing here. Okay. Anyone has anything that you want to share? We can have a few minutes of discussion. Or any question? Okay, thanks, Sharon. You reminded me about 10 minutes ago. I got 15 minutes, so now I got 2 minutes. My screen is so small. Yeah, please.
Yeah. Right. So anyone who have questions, you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask Venerable Yu Min directly. or you can also type your questions or comments in the chat box.
Okay, one from Joanne
Mm.
Wong. By introduce, does this mean Amitabha Buddha is not present in Theravada scripture? Introduce. Amitabha Buddha is not present in Theravada scripture. As long as I understand, no, we don't have the term Amitabha Buddha in the Pali scripture. That is a Mahayana. It's not preserved. We use the word preserve because it's not found in a Pali scripture, but it is in Sanskrit scriptures and it was being translated into Chinese. Okay. And question by Ling, I see evidence multiple times in ancient statues of Hinduism, Jain in Mahayana. Yeah, that's true. Ancient statue of Hinduism, Jain in Mahayana. You mean, okay, I'm not quite understanding this sentence. But yeah, even if you go to different temples and different types of Hinduism and Jain in India, you will find Mahayana, statues, right? Some of them even are similar to each other. So this is also another characteristic of Mahayana Buddhism as well.
Excuse me, Venerable, may I ask a question? Actually, it's not a question. I just want to ask Venerable. I thought Mahayana is the development from the Sikhism. You remember the Sikhism? Between the the elders and the Mahasanghika group? I thought that is a development, or rather that event lead to the splitting of Theravada Hinayana at that point of time and the Mahayana.
Yeah, what you mentioned is one of the speculated theory of how Mahayana began. But actually, there are more theories. There are even more theories that were being proposed by scholars of how Mahayana began. The one you mentioned actually was discussed for quite some time about whether it was started by Mahasamgika.
Yeah.
And some people were some scholars were very convinced that the Mahasamgika was the pre-Mahayana school, but they didn't have enough evidence to show that. So we are waiting for more like study to show whether it's from Mahasamgika or it was because of the rules of conduct or the Vinaya differences that had been. This is a very convincing theory, but it's not the only one. Right?
Actually, that event or that period of time is referred to as early Mahayana. You think there is a development to the actual Mahayana? Because I remember there is some what they call where they break Mahayana into early Mahayana and later Mahayana.
Yeah, of course, Mahayana, we have gone through stages, right?
Yeah.
There are 300 years. I think there are 1,000 years. The early Mahayana, the medium Mahayana, and then later Mahayana. So with more philosophies being developed. So I know that I think there are scholars who split the time accordingly, but I want to mention that it is not this is still a speculation. No one knows for sure how it actually started, right? So there are not only one theorist, there are three of them. So what I just mentioned, like Chopin, he mentioned that Mahayana was started by lay people, but not by monastic. So this is something quite different. But another group of scholars mentioned that no, it should be starting from the 18th school, like what you just mentioned. It must be from one of the 18 schools in the from the early Buddhism. So this theory we still don't know yet for sure. But what we can do now is know it, learn about the theory, and we don't need to decide now, Yeah, we don't have a definite
Thank you.
answer yet.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe the last question. I think there are three of them. But Sharon, what should we do?
Yeah, it's okay. Sufu, I can send the questions to you and perhaps you can
Okay.
answer them in the next session.
Okay, that that'll be good. Yeah, I don't want to hold you back for too long. Okay, thanks for your sharing and for your attention today. Just before we leave, give me 1 minute. I'd like to wind down a little bit for all of us and do a merit dedication. Take a deep breath. Breath in. Breath out. I'd like to all to join us by joining your palms together. We love to dedicate our merit of studying Dharma and sharing Dharma today. May this merit become a source of comfort, source of gratitude to all those who have suffered from natural disasters for the last few weeks, in the war zone, suffer from different natural disasters. May all beings being free from physical suffering. May all living beings being free from mental suffering. May all beings be at ease and at peace. May all beings be peaceful at all times. Okay, thank you all thank you all so much for your concentration and for your participation today. We will see you next week. All right, we continue with the development of Mahayana Buddhism and come with more questions.